morning and welcome to Rising. We've got a very special edition of our show today because there's three of us, and that's going to be fun.
Three's company.
We used to do that a lot more often, and we were having a meeting the other day with the production team, and I'm like, why don't we try three people again? It's been a while. And then they were like, okay, you want to come in on Friday? I'm like, damn, you tricked me. Okay, fine.
Cell phone.
So here we are, and we're going to get to our top story. Oh, how the mighty have fallen. New York City Mayor Eric Adams surrendered himself to the feds this morning ahead of his arraignment in federal court as he faces 5 counts of federal corruption charges. Prosecutors say that starting in 2014, Adams sought and accepted, quote, improper valuable benefits like luxury international travel from wealthy foreigners, including at least one Turkish government official seeking to influence him. Adams allegedly received free hotel rooms, meals, and entertainment while in Turkey, and has also sought over $100,000 in travel benefits dating back to 2016. Now, at times, Adams would pay a nominal sum to make it appear like he had covered the full costs of travel arrangements. He would direct those around him to create a fake paper trail. Plus, Adams returned favors to Turkish officials, according to the indictment. For instance, Adams was requested to help open the Turkish consular skyscraper without a proper fire inspection, to which Adams complied. Now, by 2018, not only was Adams accepting, but seeking illegal campaign contributions to his mayoral campaign. Again, this is according to the indictment. His gains were then compounded by New York City's small dollar donation matching program. In total, Adams' 2021 mayoral campaign allegedly illegally received more than $10 million in public funds. Now, it didn't end there, though. Even after Adams was inaugurated as mayor, he began planning to solicit additional illegal contributions and granting requests. The 5 counts he faces includes conspiracy to commit wire fraud, solicitation of a contribution by a foreign national, and bribery. The U.S. Attorney for the Southern District of New York said, quote, "These are bright red lines, and we allege that the mayor crossed them again and again for years." Faces up to 45 years in prison. Now, Mayor Adams wrote on X, quote, "You have now heard the news about today's indictment. Let me be clear, I know I've done nothing wrong, and I'm committed to continuing to fight on behalf of New Yorkers as your mayor. From here, my attorneys will take care of the case so I can take care of this city."
Influencer Olaimi Olorin reacted to the indictment on X, writing, quote, "What is important to highlight is that Eric Adams was stealing millions of public dollars, getting kickbacks, and conspiring with foreign governments while cutting funding for New Yorkers and telling us to blame the migrants. A liar, a thief, a bigot, and a hypocrite." Dem strategist Liz Smith reacted to the news that Cuomo, Andrew Cuomo that is, could be gearing up for a mayoral run, writing, quote, "Or, hear me out, as a former Cuomo person, maybe we shouldn't go from a scandal-scarred mayor who may have to resign in disgrace to a scandal-scarred governor who did have to resign in disgrace. What's in New York's DNA tells us we need to just settle for extremely flawed options."
Meanwhile, some on the right have suggested they knew this was coming. Take a listen to former President Donald Trump.
I will say this. I watched about a year ago when he talked about how the illegal migrants are hurting our city and the federal government should pay us and we shouldn't have to take them. And I said, you know what? He'll be indicted within a year. And I was exactly right, because that's what we have. We have people that use the Justice Department and the FBI at levels that have never been seen before.
Pershing Square CEO Bill Ackman reacted similarly, writing on X, quote, "I don't know whether Eric Adams is guilty or innocent. He does, however, deserve the presumption of innocence. I do know that Eric loudly spoke the truth on the migrant problem in New York City and what the consequences would be for New Yorkers and the country. Doing so required bravery, as sharing these views publicly as a Democratic mayor did not win him any friends in the party or with the Biden-Harris administration. Having witnessed the weaponization of our country's prosecutorial resources, sadly, I have to say I am much more skeptical when indictments are announced against someone whose views are not welcomed by the party in charge."
So this is very interesting because I am seeing it right now. The people defending Eric Adams are mostly on the right, and I don't think this is a good idea, frankly. He seems to be, he of course deserves, benefit of due process and all that. But what they've accused him of seems pretty solid to me, and I don't know, just because, yes, the federal government or the Justice Department is sometimes weaponized unfairly, I agree with that. And there is a, selectivity in who gets prosecuted and what gets treated as a serious offense. But I don't know that they're just going after him because of his vaguely anti-migrants comments. What do you think?
I don't buy that either. I mean, yes, he did criticize party leadership for failing to take the crisis seriously.
Like weekly, but he didn't do anything about it.
Right, exactly. I mean, he didn't address the migrant crisis himself. He just basically blamed the feds. But then also, according to the timeline of the investigation and the indictment, he was already involved in this shady behavior well before he became mayor of New York City. So the timeline just suggests that they were already looking into him before he ever made any comments about migrants and the so-called crisis in New York City after he got like 10,000 of them.
It has nothing to do with the migrants. I mean, the right wing is just looking for opportunities to talk about things. But Bill Ackman, for instance, while he might be a New York Republican or lean more conservative, and Eric Adams, let's remember, was a Republican and was a police lieutenant, and he does sway far more right than most Democrats probably would want. With that being said, he was Brooklyn Borough president, and he does have a group of supporters who've been with him in his career, you know, from the beginning, that came out on stage yesterday and he said that they backed him and they got to wait it out, and you know the process will show things. What's different about this situation as opposed to when Eliot Spitzer had to step down, or when Governor Cuomo had to step down, or when other mayors have been investigated, because we have had several investigations, is that he was indicted while he was in office, and much of that indictment had to do with his previous role as Brooklyn Borough president, and the matching funds system that New York uniquely has, where if you are able to raise a certain amount of money in the city, under a certain amount of money, you can get, it wasn't this rule at the time, so I don't want to get too confusing, but today it's 8 to 1. So you'll get $8 for every dollar you raise in the city. It's actually something that levels the playing field, and if you do it right, especially in a citywide race over many months, you can totally get those matching funds legally and easily. And that's why I think this is such a wild story, that they had to come up with some sort of scheme to get Turkish dollars into small dollar donations with individuals, fake individuals in New York, so he could get the $10 million.
Well, the funniest part of it to me is the receipts, where they'll be like, well, charge me, you have to charge me something for this plane flight, and they'll be like, okay, $50. And then the person in the text is like, well, that looks suspicious, and they're like, okay, $1,000. Like, it's the laziest kind of corruption scandal possible. And then of course I love the detail where this is always the #1 goal of like Turkish influencers and lobbyists, people, this is true, is to don't say anything about the Armenian genocide.
Yes.
They asked him, maybe just let Armenian Genocide Awareness Day pass by unacknowledged this year. It's the #1 demand request of Turkish officials, which is horrible. But
it drives me crazy because, you know, he, as Brooklyn Borough president, he also, I'm Greek American, okay, so we have very strong feelings about Erdogan, who threatened to take over the island my family's from, because he's right next to Turkey in the Mediterranean. So Erdogan is in New York this week, meeting with the Greek prime minister, because it's UN week in New York, and the building that's in contention is right across from the UN, and it has this giant flag of Turkey on it, and this was a building that should not have been approved. And so they did call in their favors, and they said that in writing, which I understand that some lawmakers do this in America, and it's really stupid, but it is a foreign concept, literally a foreign concept, for foreign governments to understand the rules of our system. And so part of the other issue is that Eric Adams had a circle around him of very young people dealing with the finance side, which is really not smart because the campaign finance board's rules are so strict. So those investigations happen internally in the CFB much further, and then they send it to the DOJ, or then send it to the FBI, or they start working simultaneously. So, you know, it was just sloppy on his part too. Like, if you're gonna go bribery, you know, don't be so dumb. And there's a 20-year-old.
And it reminds me of George Santos, who also had a very willing to go along with all of his schemes treasurer on his campaign. But there's a page in the indictment where it talks about one of these staffers being approached by someone who wanted to bribe Eric Adams. And he's like, well, I don't know, he probably doesn't want to do that. And then he goes to talk to Eric Adams, and he's like, yeah, man, get the money. And so the guy goes back, and he's like, yep, Eric Adams is totally cool with bribery, it turns out. Yeah, it's such a mess. And I do think it's kind of an interesting parallel, by the way, that on the migrant issue, just to go back to that for a second, he didn't ask for a change in policy. He just wanted more money. Like, this is a guy who's totally driven by money.
Yep, money, fame, power, etc. That's what seems to become in New York. I will be interested to see if Andrew Cuomo genuinely makes another run for it.
I've gotten calls from people. he openly says that he would rather be governor, yeah, shocker, than mayor. But
rather be president.
In a very low turnout election, well, that's how we would get there. In a very low turnout election, because we have abysmal turnout in New York, and ranked choice voting, which is a new system that we have, there's actually a pathway for him because, he just has to get a certain number of the votes, and he has a lot of money. We don't know if it could be transferred to city-wide campaigns, probably not.
Incredible. Incredible. We'll be back with more Rising right after this. Stay tuned.